This is example 3.17 on page 119 of our textbook. In this example, we're going to be figuring out how to get the empirical formula for a compound given some experimental data. So the question states, a compound contains nitrogen and oxygen, is decomposed, produces 24.5 grams of nitrogen and 70 grams of oxygen. Calculate the empirical formula of the compound. So the first step in this example is to basically convert both nitrogen amounts and oxygen amounts to moles. Remember, an empirical formula is basically the simplest whole number ratio of elements within a compound, and we've looked at some previous examples of this. So step one is to convert grams of nitrogen to moles of nitrogen and grams of oxygen to moles of oxygen. And the way we're going to do this is to divide each of them by their molar mass. So nitrogen, 24.5 grams. If we divide that by its molar mass, which is 14.01 grams per 1 mole. And then for oxygen, it's going to be 70 grams oxygen divided by 16.00 grams per mole. So grams cancel in both of these cases. For nitrogen, we get 1.75 moles of nitrogen, and for oxygen, we get 4.38 moles of oxygen. Now we can write what's called a pseudo formula for each of these. So our compound right now is N 1.75 O 4.38. Now obviously we can't have a compound with decimals as our subscripts. They have to be whole numbers. So the next thing we're going to do is to divide both of these numbers by the smaller one. So 1.75 is smaller than 4.38. So I'm going to take nitrogen, 1.75, divide that by 1.75, and I'm going to take oxygen, 4.38, and divide that by 1.75. And that's going to give us N with an understood 1, O 2.5. Now, sometimes when you work these problems, you'll end up with whole numbers, and that'll be your empirical formula. But other times, if you get something like 2.5, that's not close enough to round to 3. So now what we have to do is we have to multiply all of these subscripts by a small whole number in order to get whole number subscripts. So typically I just start with 2, multiply both numbers by 2. If I get whole numbers from there, I stop. If not, I go to 3, 4, so on and so forth. So let's try 2. If I multiply both of these by 2, I'm going to get N2, and oxygen 2.5 times 2 is going to be O5. So both of these are now whole numbers, so therefore my empirical formula is N2O5, and that is your final answer for this problem.